ShireSociety.com. Join up and move to New Hampshire for more freedom. September 26, 2020, New Hampshire News. Liberty News. Only in New Hampshire does anyone in politics actually care what a libertarian thinks. So in a way, it's refreshing to see the minor controversy over Max Abramson, a sometime New Hampshire state rep and free stater. He was also the Libertarian nominee for governor in 2016, and an old friend. But when he's a state rep, I think he's always a Republican. I don't know if he's a sitting rep right now, but I think it was a liberal person or a Democrat or something was posting complaints about him on Facebook. They said that he was supposedly pro-liberty, but he was advocating for censorship of media. He was allegedly pro-liberty, but he was advocating for censorship of media. So I don't have that original post by the Democrat or whoever that was, but I do have Max's response, which is interesting. Quote, "I put up a House resolution calling for the Netflix film Cuties to be taken off the air because it's illegal. Its content clearly violates federal law on the sexual exploitation of 11-year-old girls. Rather than working together, that put a stop to the abuse of children, Democrats on Miscellany Blue are falling back on the old Hillary Clinton tactic of attacking their accuser." Unquote. Okay, so the problem here, and the reason why this is a legitimate complaint against Max, is that he's using the government to fix this. Now, if he had put up a petition on change.org, I don't think that would be an issue, or something like that, or contacted Netflix to try to have them take it down. Okay, that is not automatically anti-liberty. It might be open to question, but it wouldn't even be the same as Discord deplatforming Free Talk Live, right? Because Discord took the whole show off the air and all of the show's access to Discord, basically, without even having a piece of content they could point to. But even what Discord did was at least a private company deciding how to interact with other citizens. It does have the right to do that. But I don't think anyone has the right to use the government at taxpayer expense to fix any problem. Even if they're trying to save the world from an asteroid hitting it, that should not be done by government at taxpayer expense. And to say that it should is not a pro-liberty position. It might be the Libertarian Party's position. It might be, a position that I wouldn't fight very hard, but it's technically not a libertarian position. Ends never justify means. You can't justify stealing from taxpayers for anything by saying, well, we saved the world, or whatever we did that was good. And of course, they don't tend to save the world with taxpayer expense. And also, again, for all I know, the film Cuties could be the worst film ever made, the most exploitative film ever made, but who cares whether it's illegal or not? What matters is whether it's unethical. Everything's illegal these days. There's a list over 200,000 pages long of things you're not allowed to do in the United States, and it's probably more like 2 million. No one even knows how long the list is. Or at least they didn't as of a couple years ago. I haven't checked to update. And by the way, is that really... what did he say he did? He said he, quote, put up a House resolution, unquote. Is that really something that's needed? Is the world under so much threat from some Netflix film that I've never heard of that we need to waste the time? Well, maybe we do need to waste the time of the legislature, but it just doesn't seem that important or that New Hampshire relevant. Although maybe it was made in New Hampshire for all I know. I don't know. Ultimately, with concerns about exploitative content, the thing to do is to, if exploitation has occurred, then the thing you do is you harm the exploiter, not the taxpayer, and not the person who accidentally clicked on the wrong video on Netflix, or the piece of information, which is just a piece of information, You go after the exploiter without taxpayer expenditure in some way. And of course, what Max did is not the worst thing you could do, because there's very little taxpayer expenditure involved in him pushing this resolution. At least it's not a law or whatnot. You'd have the expense of hearing the bill, but maybe not much more. Other than the chilling effect of a government waving its dick around. So compared to what all the other politicians are doing, this is not exactly a war crime on Max's part. And even when you compare him to other free staters, people who have voted in favor of minimum wages and call themselves free staters, that's much more serious than Max doing this. This whole thorny question of exploitive content in digital form. The right way to look at how to handle this sort of thing is treat it all like the phone company, right? All this stuff should be treated the way phone companies treat phone calls. They don't. There's no prior restraint on a phone call. You're not banned from making calls because you're a criminal. If you say something sexually exploitative over the phone, or send something over the phone, like a modem, if you can still do that, I don't know, then that sending process and the transmission process is not interfered with. It's the person who did the bad thing that gets in trouble. Once you start deciding what gets through and what doesn't, like on Netflix or whatever, or YouTube, it's just a fast road to hell. If you look at how Chinese communist YouTube has become, that's where this kind of thing tends to head. You ban one thing from getting through, then all of a sudden all kinds of things get banned from getting through. Good things in many cases, not just exploitative stuff. Okay, here's a post from Bill Allman with some other New Hampshire news. I think he's quoting the Concord Monitor. This must be an older piece of news. Quote, under Sununu, the New Hampshire Department of Justice is presently fighting an effort by the American Civil Liberties Union of New Hampshire and a group of Granite State newspapers, including the Monitor, to make the list immediately public under public records requests. Unquote. They're talking about the Lori list, the secret list of corrupt cops that the government won't release. Quote, that challenge received a hearing this week in the state Supreme Court. 3 months later, the governor's position on releasing the Lori list appears to, unquote. I guess they're saying it appears to have changed. So the new headline, I guess also from the Monitor, reads, quote, Sununu endorses law enforcement accountability recommendations, reverses course on Lori list. Sununu endorses, quote, New Hampshire will move forward on an expansive package of state police reforms in the wake of the death of George Floyd and a string of demonstrations over injustice in policing this summer. Governor Chris Sununu announced at a press conference. Unquote. So Sununu, anyway, he's reversed course on whether to release just release it. Just F-bombing, release it. The whole thing, no redactions. It's government information. Well, okay, I guess if it's got if it's got a private citizen's social security number, then maybe not. Maybe that could be redacted. But then it's not like the phone company, right? Well, I don't know. As long as it's out there and hasn't been released, I guess it does make a pretty good political football for government criticizing gadflies like me. Something else that's up, let's see, from InsideSources.com. Quote, Davos, New Hampshire, only state to reject Fed funds for public charter ed. U.S. Secretary, Education, Betsy DeVos, I don't know, maybe it's DeVos, I don't know how she pronounces it, told NH Journal she didn't know of any other state other than New Hampshire that had rejected federal public education funding for charter schools, a decision that appears even more problematic as Granite State parents look for education options amid the COVID-19 crisis. Last December, the Democratic-controlled New Hampshire Fiscal Committee voted to reject $46 million in federal funding to help create more public charter schools and provide parents with educational options in the state's public school system. Senate Majority Leader Dan Feltus, now the Democratic nominee for governor, supported the decision to reject this funding, unquote. So they also say that I guess the Republican Education Commissioner, Frank Edelblue, who is actually a pretty pro-liberty guy for having reached such a high government position, he keeps bringing the request back to the committee every month, and they keep rejecting it. Well, what is this? What, you get to keep revoting until they say yes? How is that okay? Isn't there supposed to be some large delay of some kind of at least after a vote fails? What if we could just let's just keep voting for Hillary every month until she's elected. We'd have Hillary for president. So I guess, I'm glad. I don't want New Hampshire accepting federal funds for anything. I don't care if it's for, again, saving the world from an asteroid or not. That's stolen property. Don't take it. Don't touch it. Don't do anything that puts, more federal strings attached to your existence. Now, if you can help it, so good on gridlock. I have, changing topics completely, I have an update on these 3 mothers who were arrested for bringing their kids to a playground from freekeen.com. Quote, in late April, I shared some outrageous video of uniformed, masked Concord gang members threatening a group of peaceful people who had come to a local playground with their kids during the stay-at-home lockdown. The masked bullies targeted the small group of parents, but the same gang ignored mass anti-lockdown demonstrations at the State House, with hundreds violating the orders of His Excellency Chris Sununu. The armed gangsters knew they don't have the numbers to challenge 400 demonstrators, but picking on a few peaceful families when no one else was around, now that's more their speed. Now, one of the parents, Rochelle Kelly of Ware, NH, says that even though she left the playground when the armed gang members ordered her to, unquote, just have to interrupt here. I get so tired. If Freekeen if it were a little bit less shrill, a little bit less hyperbolic, people would pay more attention to it. Anyway, okay, going back to the quote. She left the playground when she left the playground when the armed gang members were ordered to. Several months later, they issued a warrant for her arrest on charges of criminal trespassing and disorderly conduct. 2 other parents from the same playground incident, Pamela Jewell and Tyler Workman, were also arrested recently, according to WMUR. Curiously, WMUR was able to get the Concord police gang to comment on the story and actually provide information. The government lapdog media gets special treatment, apparently. When I requested the information about the case from the Concord Gang Records Division on Tuesday, I received a response back saying it could take up to 90 days. It wasn't just me. Kelly herself requested records from CPD and was also given the same response. WMUR had no such difficulty, apparently. The good news is that Kelly is planning to fight the charges and has retained Liberty lawyer Dan Hines to take the case. Reopen NH founder Andrew Manous has put together a fundraiser for her legal defenses that in just a few days has raised over $2,600 of its $10,000 goal. Just to be clear, multiple parents in the so-called live free or die state are now facing 2 years behind bars for bringing their kids to a playground. It's a perfect example of how insane this fear world is and how far the state is willing to go in order to ensure people's obedience. Were the parents at risk of infection by bringing their kids to a playground? Maybe, but it should be their risk to take. We were always taking risks. Until 2020, risk was a regular part of life and still is. All right, the rest of it's just her hyperbole. But, again, I like to focus on, rather than complaining about things the government is doing that might actually help against COVID, my focus is on things the government is doing to help the COVID, right? And if you're bottling people up inside, keep making it harder for them to exercise, especially when they're Americans, fat Americans, which I don't know if any of these people were. I don't know what any of these people look like in this particular incident. But one thing you do not do to make Americans live longer is make them exercise less. And especially American kids are simply going to get less exercise if they can't do it at a playground. If they have to exercise by running down a sidewalk back and forth, they're not going to get as much exercise. No, these park closures are just, that's stuff that helps the COVID. Especially the large parks, the ones like where they've been closing down, remote trails and stuff like that. Anyway, Kelly's arraignment is in Concord District Court on October 19th. So it would be really nice. This is one of those moments where it would be nice to have a peaceful mob, right? Like a bunch of people screaming at the police. That's what we need. I can work with that in a case like this. It should look like Library Hill looked on February, can't remember, 2010 in Nashua. Oh, there's a comment on the Free Keene article that I think is interesting. Quote, the WMU article says that the park has since reopened in June. So before June, the park was too deadly for kids to play in, and then it's okay? Someone explain that one to me, unquote. There's another comment here from Jumping Jacks, September 24th. Quote, they broke the law. What did you think was going to happen? Now they want $10,000 to fight this in court? You gotta be kidding. What is wrong with people? Their actions were captured on video. They were horrible to the police. I'm surprised the PD didn't lock her up then and there. She knew what the consequences would be, yet she chose to expose her kids to potential infection, including themselves. Unquote. So, actually, the claim here is that, again, the video, I don't know who's talking or what's going on exactly in the video. I've seen it, but I don't think we know that Rochelle Kelly was rude to the police. There were people in the video that were allegedly rude to the police, but again, that's a human right. You have a human right to be rude to the police, and although that's not really my way of doing it, I would feel more comfortable in society and safer if more people were rude to the police, because that carves out space for people like me who are polite to the police. Well, generally, I mean, maybe I've said some things to the police that some people consider rude. But yeah, being rude. Where in New Hampshire law is it illegal to be rude to the police? And by the way, how was it illegal for these people to go to the playground? Was some law passed that said you can't go to playgrounds? Again, they're allowed on playgrounds right now. And since when do you get arrested for following police orders? I hope that all of these people videotaped all of their interaction with the police during this incident. This is why you do that, right? Even when the police tell you not to, police don't give up their gun, and you don't give up your camera. You don't stop recording when they tell you to, and you make sure to record from the beginning when a police officer approaches you. You are in danger, and the danger is legal, and the danger goes up if you don't record. Now, I don't think the police tried to discourage people from recording this incident, and that's good on them. But then that's not that much of an issue anymore. So continuing Jumping Jack's quote, which should be some good red meat for the audience here. A quote, there was a mandated order. They intentionally broke it. Her pleading not guilty is stupid. On the video, you can clearly see her actions that point to her guilt. Ian, your unending bullshit continues. You always blame the police. He's talking to the owner of freekeene.com here. You always blame the police when they enforce a law. That is their job. My daughter is a deputy, and I asked about your constant whining. She said the police do not have as much leeway of enforcing laws as you think you do. Each circumstance is different, and each law is on the books. The police have to enforce the law, period. They're not your slaves. You do not reign over them, and they do an extremely dangerous job. Unquote. Unsubquote, I guess I should say. All right, you can say it if you want, but actually it's pretty rare for, a cop to be unable to decide whether he's going to arrest somebody or not in a situation like this. Police have the word, like the Keene Police Department has the word discretion written into their website. They are supposed to exercise discretion in deciding whether to arrest someone or not. I've violated many laws right in front of police and sent them emails telling them when and where I was going to do it, and they didn't arrest me. I had a whole campaign, back in 2009 of doing that. I had to run 9 different events before I could get anyone to arrest me, and I was absolutely breaking the laws. I broke more laws with each event. I would break all the ones that I had broken at the previous event, plus a new one. And no, actually, policing is not an extremely dangerous job. Being a fisherman is much more dangerous than being a policeman. If you do it professionally in the ocean, and so are many other professions. All of the police officers in New Hampshire, there hasn't been one killed by the public since 2006, I think. And that's great. That reflects well on New Hampshire that it's been such a long period of time. But it kind of puts the lie to the idea that it's really dangerous. Okay, I've finally run out of New Hampshire news to tell you about. However, I'll be calling talk radio, probably roughly 4 different shows in New Hampshire to talk about these things and make sure that these government abuses are still on the agenda, that someone in the media is complaining about them on relatively mainstream press outlets. Liberating an FCC tower for 5 minutes, as many times as I can. I lose track, but I think so far I've made about 2,000 calls to talk radio since I moved to New Hampshire. I don't make talk radio calls as much as I make YouTube videos, but I'm doing what I can there. And the rate of calls has gone up quite a bit over the last 3 years. I've really been able to turn this into a well-oiled machine, although I don't have a funded phone all the time. I don't keep my phone funded, so I'm only able to make calls for about maybe 6 months out of every 12. And if you wish to help me with that, if you wish to fund my phone for me during some of those other 6 months, my 6 off months, then I can increase the number of calls. I can make usually about 30 calls per month if I have a funded phone currently. And these are almost always to New Hampshire Talk Radio. It costs, of course, about $40 a month to fund my phone. I just use off-the-shelf funding, cards, gift cards to fund it or whatever. But yeah, I've found that since I have a phone that is funded month to month, I don't really need it every month for I can usually go 3 or 4 weeks without a phone. But again, I wouldn't do that if someone else was footing the bill. I'd just leave it funded, and I'd make a heck of a lot more calls, and I'd liberate a heck of a lot more FCC towers. So give me contact me. I'm Dave Ridley on Facebook is the easiest way usually, or Ridley Report at live.com. Contact me if you would like to underwrite my talk radio calls, or rather, the phone that I use to make the calls. $40 generally gets you about 25 calls, because it funds the phone for that 1 month period of time that I can make those calls. All right, Ridley out.
If you love liberty, declare your independence by signing the Shire Society Declaration at shiresociety.com.